It's Thursday, October 31st. Happy Halloween, everyone. I am Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. It is a hell of a day to talk ball. If I was a better podcast host and really somebody who just had no dignity, I would totally lean into like, it's a spooky day. It's a scary day to talk ball. But no, it's not. It's never a scary day to talk ball. It's always a hell of a day to talk ball. And it's always a hell of a day to talk ball when Nate Tice joins the show. And he is joining me to do just that. Nate Tice, what's going on, buddy?
Orange, you glad to see me? That was,
I know.
Yeah, I know. This is it was our backup options for something Halloween themed, which was me trying to fit into an old outfit, trying to find another one in the closet that are made out of about 10 cents worth of materials made somewhere in a sweatshop. And instead, I just went for an orange McLaren sweatshirt for my Halloween theme. And I think that works out. I think that really works out. We're talking some Netherlands soccer before. Just covering all of our bases here. Everything orange on this show. But no, it is very good to see you. Very happy to be here. I'm happy it's spooky season too. Halloween's one of my favorite holidays I you can see, as I have nothing to wear for it.
Yeah, you really came prepared for one of your favorite holidays here. But no, look, I mean, I think this is basically a costume for you. And for the people watching on YouTube, they can see I basically look like I'm a giant baby. Because I look, there's like pumpkin costumes that they put on like little children. That is what this sweatshirt looks like here. But alas, I am kind of against the idea of having multiple costumes. Like, I'm not creative enough. Okay, I know I work in like media and podcasting and all like the stuff. Maybe I should be more of a creative person. I'm not a creative person. I've got one space in my brain for one costume, and I will be wearing that costume on Saturday at a costume themed event with my wife. I am not going to wear like multiple costumes here. Costumes are for Andy Behrens, and Andy's probably coming decked out in a costume on tomorrow's show. So look out for that for the people on YouTube. But yes, Nate and I are decked in our orange. We've got Halloween hanging over our heads here. We've definitely, I tell you what, buddy, we do have a little bit of a spooky, maybe zombified Thursday night game to preview at the end of this show. How perfect, Jets, Texans, what's left of these teams for Halloween. Some very scary stuff going on for both of those operations.
Before we get to that, I'm predicting such great schlock in that game. Like, I cannot wait. That's a Thursday night game I have circled because this is what I like to see, because there's some talent, but then there's a lot of schlock with these teams, and that's just always great. By the way, I got ixnayed on the one father-son outfit I wanted to wear. And again, I know I don't know your movie references because you dropped a Pink Panther on me before. Old Pink Panther on me before
great films, by the way. True art.
They're classics. And man, I think the last time I saw them was on like TCM or something like that. But the one outfit I wanted to do with my son was Master Blaster from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And I'm not sure if you have seen that.
I've seen it, yeah.
Oh, so that was the outfit I have been begging to do. And especially my son, at first, he was very bald for a while. He is blonde. He has blonde hair. I had blonde hair, believe it or not, as a kid too. And that is just one outfit I really want to do is Master Blaster. My wife just went, no chance. Are you ever doing that? So I just have to get it on air. That is an idea I had. So I did have some creativity for once about this.
Well, there you go. Your creativity box has been checked, and the people love to see that. So, hey, I'm rooting for you at some point to maybe get that costume done in a future Halloween. For today, we are going to talk about Thursday Night Football. As I mentioned, very scary little matchup between the Texans and the Jets, but we are in the Fantasy Film Room. That's the show, okay? It's Fantasy Film Room. And for the new people here, again, I always say for the Nate Tice fans who just came here, like, we got to see what Nate's wearing for Halloween. Let's check out the YouTube show. You see kind of a disappointing costume by both of us. Nevertheless, you're not going to be disappointed in the analysis because for the first part of the show, I take a trending sort of fantasy topic to dive into. In the second segment, Nate talks about a topic that he's nerding out about. And, we also maybe will say a little bit of quiet part out loud. I do think we have a couple of good things to talk about in that section today. And, of course, like I said, we wrap up with the Thursday Night Football preview. So, Nate, let's get into it. Topic for today. I love how, by the way, we have gone from on Football 301, we've like, well, let's talk about good teams. Let's talk about the things we like. And then on this show, let's talk about some things that are not going well. I wanted to talk about 4 offenses today that I think I want to know from your perspective if they're just stuck in mid, basically. Like, I don't know that these teams are bad, but I'm not so sure they're good. And those teams, for me, the ones I landed on were Bengals, Cowboys, Dolphins, and then I kind of think we need to have a little bit of a Vikings conversation. They're my fourth team in terms of offensive midness. So let's start with the Bengals, who are 16th in EPA per play since week 5, and they're 23rd in offensive success rate since week 5. I brought this up on the show a lot, and I'm glad we're going to finally unpack this, that when they had that big eruption game with the Ravens, back and forth affair, I thought, well, you know what, this is going to be like the fantasy carnival of the year. Their defense stinks, but this offense can put up points. And then since then, I would say they've had 3 pretty disappointing offensive outputs. Admittedly, maybe, some like against the Giants, okay, fine. You didn't need that many points to beat the Giants. But this last week against the Eagles, I really just didn't think they put up they certainly did not put up the amount of points they need to win with that defense on the other side. So right now, kind of give me the diagnostic of where this Bengals offense is.
This is an offense, and I compared Burrow to like he's really finding his Phillip Rivers and how he's playing now. And that's a compliment. It really is. But he attacks underneath. And this is what this offense has become. And they aren't going to shy away from it. But the problem with doing that, I mean, the opening drive against the Eagles is like the perfect example of it. It was like, oh my God, 17, 18 plays. It took forever, like 10 minutes. It was just a long, long drive. This is how this offense wants to attack because they're daring you to come up, creep up, and then they'll hit you over the top with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins when he's healthy. That is what their formula is. There are benefits of that. There are negatives. And negatives can be, it's a lot of 4 or 5 yard gains. It's a lot of, if you don't hit those, if you take a penalty, if you have a drop, offense gets off script, that's it. Because they don't have the explosive plays to mitigate for that. And right now, all it is just go balls. It's not a lot of design stuff, a play action shot play, something that is more extended. And that's where I think some of the offensive frustrations are, and maybe where it just sometimes leaves you lacking. And it's not just like, you really feel when T. Higgins is not in there, but that shouldn't cripple the whole offense. He's a hell of a player, right? And he's going to be a little touchy this year in a contract situation, but T. Higgins not in there. You still have Jamar Chase. You still have an offensive line that I think is okay. I wouldn't say they're great, but they're solid. And then the run game's solid too. And I just think it's one of these where they're lacking those 10 to 20 yard gains. It's either 5 yard gain or go ball. And I think that's just really the issues right now. I wish that I could scream that like, oh, they're going to be fine. They're going to be this. This is the preferred offensive attack of Burrow, preferred offensive attack of the staff. And I think just when Higgins is not in there, it's just always going to be like, oh, okay, that's it. Because if you wipe out Jamar Chase, they can't rely on Jermaine Burton yet. You got Mike Gesicki, who is a limited player, but has moments. I mean, he had a nice game last week, but it's like you really are going to thrive through Mike Gesicki in the year 2024. So it's a team that needs Higgins, which is, I would like a borderline number one receiver. A number one receiver, he truly would be on most teams out on the field. But the fact that you still have Jamar Chase, why can't you get Chase the ball? Why can't you get Chase these easy touches? Why can't you get yak opportunities for him? So it's a very static offense. It's their preference, though. So your original question, is this destined to be mid? Yeah, this is the attack. And if Higgins is not out there, it loses a lot of venom. It just loses that other explosive element because they're just daring you to pick one. One of them's not out there, meaning Chase or Higgins. This is just what it's going to feel like. Even if I like some aspects of it, I just don't think it's just going to always, be satisfying unless everybody's out there and healthy, which is an issue.
This has sort of been my thing about when we talk about the future of the Bengals offense. Yeah. And I know, right now we're talking about just this season and everything like that, but it's so interesting to consider, okay, how is this team going to thrive? Like if they don't have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins just all out there, they don't have all of their dudes. Is that even possible? Because obviously, like you said, they're in a contract situation with T. Higgins and everything of that nature. And I think they've really tried to do things with Jamar Chase where he is getting more of those layup and the gimme touches. I always reference a conversation I had with him back at the Super Bowl last year where he talked about, I want to get more opportunities from the slot. I want to earn those opportunities. I want to earn the coaching staff's trust to run those plays. And I think they've done a pretty good job of that. His average depth of target has actually been below air yards per target has been below 10 in each of the last 3 years after being like a pretty beefy 12.6.
Yes.
Like they've tried to do some of the underneath stuff with him. It just, and it also, if you look at slot snaps, like he's right at about 29.9% according to True Media. Like that is higher than any other point in his career. But I also think they've run into issues too because Higgins hasn't consistently been available. And like you said, they don't trust Jermaine Burton yet. I do think at some point they're going to need to ramp up Jermaine Burton because he brings juice. And I don't think that they necessarily love, like they've had to do the thing where it's not quite Jacksonville-esque where nobody like can do multiple things, if that makes sense. But it starts to get diminishing returns a little bit when, okay, Higgins isn't out there, but we have to play Jamar Chase more outside. We have to play Yoshivas more outside. I don't think they love him. I think they want him to do like a big slot thing for them. And so they have to kick him more outside. They have to make Mike Gesicki like kind of the true slot receiver because nobody else on this offense is really a slot receiver. So it starts to create a lot of like diminishing returns. Like, Chase obviously can win at any of the 3 receiver positions. He's great at that. But he really becomes weaponized like a lot of these guys do when you can move him around. Yoshivas probably projects best as that power slot receiver. Gesicki probably projects best as we hit him 4 times per game instead of like 8 times per game. So I think that's where this just feels complicated. If they can't get Jermaine Burton ramped up, I do think that this will consistently be an issue throughout the course of the year.
And even losing Joe Mixon, that the run game is 4-yard gains, which is fine, but then where are your explosive plays coming from? Like that, and that is where that's the formula that I always come back to it, and that's what you have to be efficient in some way, and you have to be explosive in some way. So if you're just relying on Higgins and Chase going on go balls and I always just want to say the Greek freak, but Yoshivas, but on him, that's a great point about him because on the outside he has strength and everything, but he's not like a long burner. He's more of an intermediate guy. And so it's a great call about him being more of a power slot. And you just even look at the numbers outside of EPA and everything. The dropback success rate is ridiculously high. Like Burrow outside of garbage time over 50% on dropback success rate. That's pristine. That's what you want. And you still are just always like, this is it? Like, oh man, even the Giants game relied on an extended play. It wasn't within the structure late in the game where he hit Chase on a beauty. Hit him over the top towards the sideline. And that one was an extended play not within the structure of the offense. So again, they just are not manufacturing explosive plays. And I think when they, like you said, I love that you brought up the Jacksonville thing. It just because it really is, there's some fragileness with the personnel because they become, a lot of the guys have overlapping skill sets and not in a good way. So like all of them are primarily should be slot guys. So that is such a great point to bring up though.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the run game too, because like, is this just? I think a lot of the passing game issues and some of the staticness, it's really just how Joe Burrow wants to play, right? Like we can say, hey, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Well, the quarterback doesn't want to do it, and like, guess what? He's Joe Burrow. You're not gonna force him to do something he doesn't want to do because he is the guy in the building.
He wants to control everything. He wants to see everything. Him and Rodgers kind of have that same. A lot of these quarterbacks he can do it, but it's just like everyone that wants motion, wants more play action. Joe doesn't want it. And guess who has the biggest contract in that building? Joe Burrow. So that he's going to have.
You've brought this up about Matt Ryan, right? Where in Atlanta, like Matt Ryan was the guy, and it probably took like a true. I don't know about. I mean, they never really like bottomed out, but it took like okay, we're falling apart here. We have to bring in Kyle Shanahan to fix this offense. And even then, it took like a year before they really unveiled everything with Matt Ryan, like all these cool wrinkles and turn your back to the defense.
He didn't want to bootleg. And Kyle Shanahan had to go trust me. Trust me. But it took a full year. Aaron Rodgers took a full year. Same guy with Matt LaFleur. They took a full year before they bought in. All of these coaches are, they've been there since day one or, now, Callahan's gone, so like now they have guys that have been in the system.
They just elevate the quarterback coach to the offensive coordinator, so it's not as if he's going to be able to push Burrow and all this stuff. So it's like, maybe at some point somebody can push Burrow, but it's probably not this coaching staff, and I don't think this coaching staff is bad necessarily either. So they're just kind of, it's just one of those. I hate to say it, people hate when I say this, but it just is what it is. Like, and I don't think it's going to necessarily change here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the running game because you mentioned it's not a big play run game. And, Joe Mixon in Houston this year, 5.9 explosive rushing rate. That's 18th out of 43 backs who've had 50 plus carries. So it's not as if like, oh man, he's gone and like, yeah, he's the greatest or anything like that. So I don't think it was a Joe Mixon issue, but I also think that I do think their bet, like we're going to move on from Mixon and we're going to go cheaper with Moss and we are going to get more Chase Brown. I kind of think so far they're losing that bet a little bit. I don't know if that necessarily says much about the backs or it says more just about the way this offense runs itself. So I know people really like have hopes for Chase Brown as like a breakout fantasy back. And for the most part, like he's been fine, but is there sort of a limited ceiling to this run game too?
Yeah, there is. Even the runs that they run, because there's so much shotgun spread, those runs aren't going to be explosive runs because you don't have the quarterback element. So you can't, there's not the same element of shotgun runs that the Bills or the Ravens have. Burrow's a good athlete, but he's just not a runner. I mean, actually has had some tremendous scrambles this year. So having said that, but a designed runner. So that's where when you're in shotgun runs, you get more explosive elements because you are not blocking someone, you're reading them. That creates more space in the run game. So when they run out of the shotgun, it's a lot of duo, it's a lot of at you stuff, which is by design to create a lot of third and shorts. So then you let Burrow can, hey, all right, they're playing us tight. All right, I'll hit you over the top. But most of the time, defenses are going like, fine. Like the Giants game was a great example. Fine, soft coverage, whatever. Check it down to Chase Brown. All right, tackle. All right, you got a first down. All right, do it again. And more often than not, defenses are winning the war of attrition over four quarters because the Bengals defense, and this is complementary football, if you want to win this way, your defense has to be good. If you have a bad defense, you have to be explosive. It's just how it goes. And again, there's some math to this all. It's just like, oh man, I always say more teeth or anything. It's Jurassic World where the guy's like, we need more teeth. The little kid does it. I hate the line too, but that's really where it is. It's like, you need more teeth because the math just doesn't add up. And when the defense is this bad and a bottom 5 defense anywhere you look at, and I would even say bottom 3 is when you are trying to be a hyper efficient offense, which has benefits. All right, if you have one bad drive and they give up another touchdown and you matriculate down the field, don't score points, and the defense gives up another touchdown. Well, now we're running out of time. We're running out of plays. Now we have to chase explosives, and that's not how we want to play. So it's just it's a weird year for the Bengals because their personnel didn't catch up on defense. Higgins is going through his stuff, and so now they're just missing spots. They've got misfits everywhere, but it's still a fine offense. I actually still enjoy watching Burrow operate in it. It's just this is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think results-wise, they might be kind of stuck in mid to upper mid, which again, like 16th in EP.
Yeah.
Right. Like maybe after they get if they get Higgins in here, I think they can get up to 12th-ish, but maybe not like a top 10 offense. Again, I will just say I do think they got to ramp up Jermaine Burton at some point, and he did run a season high 42.5% of the routes last week, which was 4th most on the team. And like if you look at the other weeks when Higgins hasn't played, the first 2 weeks of the season, he was at 2.9 and 19.5. Okay. And like then he barely played in between these games. So that was definitely interesting at the very least. All right, well, look, no Higgins. We'll throw Burton out here a little bit. And they threw him one deep shot. He looks good to me on film when I watch him, like in, very, very limited looks. He's explosive.
It's never talent. That's the issue.
Oh, well, yeah, it was never talent with Jermaine Burton. It's a lot of other stuff, but they do have a week 12 bye. So maybe with games against the Raiders, the Ravens, the Chargers, maybe after that week 12 bye, we see a little bit more of Jermaine Burton. I think if they really are just at a impasse with the Higgins thing and it ain't going to happen, like that is a guy you need ramped up for 2025, even if it's not this year.
Yep, have to, because that's how this, it's just showing that this offense needs 2 good receivers. So yeah, a lot of offenses need 2 good receivers, but this offense particularly because so many guys are isolated. Like this is just how they have to live. And when you're living on islands with no motion and everything, these guys have to win an ISO ball. So you need 2 good players out there. Do you see the Burton substitution thing? I tweeted it.
No, I didn't.
But okay, so there was a whole sequence where Burrow was trying to go fast on the 3rd down. So he was trying not to let the Eagles defense sub. And so they went fast. And then so everyone's running to the line. And then Burton just trots out there and then realizes what's going on and runs back. And so because of that, the refs sit on the ball because you have to let the defense substitute if you substitute. Even if you don't substitute, if you run a guy on, that counts because the defense can react. So Burrow loses his Like I tweeted this, and I've never seen him like this, and like he almost punched the ref, like because he threw his fist, and like the ref was like whoa, but and then he calms down, and at first I was like, oh freaking refs, I couldn't wait to clip it. I was about to get on the refs.
Yeah,
I watched the TV copy, and then you just see Jermaine Burton trotting on the field, and I was like, oh god, Burrow's gonna kill him.
Yeah, never mind. I take it back.
So
we'll never see him again.
Talent with Jermaine Burton.
Yeah,
it's all the other stuff.
Yeah. All the other little things.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned ISO ball. Perfect transition to the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, God.
Cowboys, 26th in EPA per play right now, 21st in success rate, which, look, this offense has been frustrating at times. And this is since week 5. All these numbers are since week 5. Just tried to get recent kind of samples here. This team has always felt like difficult. Like the offense feels challenging for Dak, and like any Cowboys fan, especially like producer Colin, a lot of buddies of mine, they're always like, why does it feel like nobody's open on this offense? Like I said, it always feels hard for Dak, but it's never been outright bad results wise from any like metric standpoint. It's been bad this year. Basically, like any metric you look at to evaluate offense, it's not even just been disappointing. Really, like we're talking about, is it stuck in mid? It's just been bad this year. So, Nate, why the fall off this year compared to previous years? And is there anything that Mike McCarthy and the boys in Dallas can do to fix this right now?
Reconfigured offensive line was the number one thing, even more than not even more than I'm going to get to the second thing, but just reconfigured offensive line. When you're going into the season with starting 2 rookies at the 2 most important spots, left tackle and center, that's just always going to be a wild card. Cooper Beebe at center has been solid, I would say, for a rookie. Tyler Guyton's faced injuries, so they had to bump out Tyler Smith. All right, now you're on a backup left guard. Okay, and Tyler Smith can do okay at left tackle. He's an amazing left guard, and I think I still actually projected him as a tackle coming out of the draft, but he's still solid. But that's not the plan. You're already going on to your auxiliary plan, and then you don't running game wise. I don't think I have to like say anything new here when you just look at Ezekiel Elliott's yards per carry stats, and that's just because they don't have a back that can mitigate the offensive line. They don't have an offensive line that can make it easier, and they don't have play calling that makes any of it easier. So and I actually think McCarthy and Schottenheimer do okay stuff. It's just not revolutionary stuff. It's a scheme that needs players, and they don't have players. They have CD and they have Dak and Jake Ferguson. And like that's about it. And
like Tolbert's giving him some stuff.
He's fine. Yeah. And then he's an auxiliary option in a good offense. And that's kind of it's like a backhanded compliment. It's like,
he's like a 3-ish.
Yeah.
And he's their 2.
Yeah. And he's their 2. And you brought up the great point that they want to be an 11 personnel team, which limits some of the Jake Ferguson stuff. Because, all right, how do you help out your tackles? You chip help. All right. Well, who chips help? The tight end, the running back. Okay. So now they can't get out. And then now you're putting more on the receivers to win. Because now we have 3 receivers. Okay. These guys are chip helping. All right. Now they have to win an ISO ball. CD's the only one that can do that. Now CD, we have to put in a slot. That's his best spot. All right. Are we going to have these other guys going on the outside? And it's just, it's kind of frustrating and kind of shrug your shoulders at it, but it's like, it's all stuff that kind of like, this is what the Cowboys looked like in the preseason. Like, this was just like, this is what you guys are setting yourself up to be. Yeah. You hope there's some ascension from some of your young guys, but those are bets. And sometimes you crap out, and this is what it looks like. And now it's just ISO ball to CD. Like we just started this segment. So you don't have a run game you can rely on. You're having to pass. And now if you take CD out of the game, you're relying on other guys to win, and they just can't consistently win right now. Brandon Cooks has had a hell of a career, but he's not the Brandon Cooks that he used to be. He shouldn't be, but he shouldn't be. The bet shouldn't have been that he was. He's 30 something years old already. He was already losing a step. So, and you started as destined to be mid. It was like, this is what they felt like. And I hate to sound like that because I do like so much. I love CD and I love Dak. But that's it. That's all this offense has got. And they're, again, another personnel team, a team with personnel that's fragile. One guy can't go, or one guy does this. We can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. When you start getting to that and limitations, it leads to an offense that's going to sit 20th and 22nd as opposed to an offense that actually scares you. Dak just has to be a machine. And right now it's like, you see what happens. He's going to make 2 mistakes because he's going to try some stuff, and then they can't overcome it because their defense sucks too. So it's not really fun in Dallas right now. I hate watching them. Like I really do. Yeah, I really hate studying them right now, which is kind of stinks.
Yeah, because I think Dak's a good quarterback, but he's not, it's not Pat Mahomes or something like that. Or any of these guys. Like he's more of, and I don't think he's truly like the Bucky Brooks, like the truck trailer analogy. I don't think he's necessarily the trailer or anything. No. I think he's more of a truck than a trailer, but there's levels to being a truck. He's maybe he's maybe a Tacoma or one of the Nissan Frontier.
2-door.
The 2-door ones, the smaller trucks. Okay. He's not one of these big bad boys, stuff like that. So he can definitely haul a load for you, but this is a lot he's having to haul here. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Brooks and like Kevontae Turbin running real routes for this team. What are we doing? What are we doing with like these guys, as like real contributing wide receivers on an offense that, I don't think, Jerry Jones says Mike McCarthy designs bad plays and bad concepts. I don't think the plays are bad. I think they're just, they're typical. They're fine.
Staples.
I also think probably maybe that's the way Dak wants to play. I mean, it's
put a pin in that.
It's yeah, right. I was gonna say it's notable to me that all last year we have this conversation about Dak Prescott just loves playing in this system. It's like revolutionized the way he's thought about quarterback play. And man, when the timing and the routes all line up together and he's going blah, 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 on and on about that. And then this year, the whole talk is, we got to change up the offense to make it work. It was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Also, and I keep thinking about when we did top 10 offenses for Football 301, and we had a bunch of Cowboys people pissed at us for not putting them in the top 10. And I'm like, did we not just have a whole conversation all off season about how they don't have any players? And guess what? We're 8 weeks into the NFL season and they don't have any players. Like that's just the reality of the situation. So I think it's just one of those situations when, of course, like when your front office is Jerry Jones and all of his cronies, this is going to happen. They did not build a roster that made sense for the coaching staff that they had. And I don't think a very good understanding of your quarterback and anything like that. And now CeeDee Lamb has played 50% of his snaps in the slot this year, which is actually lower than either of the last 2 seasons. Because again, you've got to kick him outside because you've got all these other guys like Brooks and Turpin. So, not only do I think this team is stuck in mid, Nate, I actually think this could get worse. Like I can see more scenarios about how this can get worse before it can get better.
Yeah, and when more teams have more tape, and then it's just going to get worse. And the claim, and that's something you just talked about. Like these quarterbacks, especially the ones that are cemented in their spot, they all have preferences. So like I, as a quarterback, had a preference. I'm a stupid backup in college. Like we all have plays we like. And some have more say than others. And a guy like Dak, who is very headstrong, very smart, is going to be like, no, I want to do this. Like, I hate how many stop routes they run. Stop routes are extended hitch routes, 10 yards, 10 to 12 yards on the outside. Dak loves them. I hate them. Like that is a relic of old football to me. That is something I grew up in as stop routes, as isolated receiver. We talked about this Marvin Harrison Jr. That is an old offensive attack that I even grew up in, but those times have passed. There's a time and place for them, but you shouldn't rely on those as your base concepts to have those because it's just too hard to win that way. Unless you have a guy that...
who once told me that this was his favorite route to run? Jamar Chase. So we're all in the same like kind of zone here with these two teams.
And the thing, and this is the difference. What are you most scared about with Chase is him beating you over the top, right? He's one of the best hand-eye coordinations. That's why his are a little more lively than CD. CD is a 4-5 guy. His whole thing is body control and yak and the fact that he can play tough and play big, but he's not an iso ball guy. He's a guy on the move guy, over routes and crossers and digs and stuff, comebacks, stuff that get him moving. But stop routes are Michael Gallup. Stop routes are T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Those guys. That's why the Bengals can live with those, and actually why their stop routes work a little bit better. Marvin Harrison Jr. We've had a million conversations about him. That's not his. He's not scaring you over the top. He can win, but it's not his thing. It's more getting on the move, more of a finesse guy. So That's why, but Dak loves those because Dak wants everybody to be in a perfect spot so he can be supercomputer brain and go do. And I don't know, it's just hard. It's so hard for me to parse that. It's like, I want the quarterback to be comfortable, but sometimes you got to rock their world and go like, we got to get this guy to move. You got to throw a big dig or something like that. But I think this is all a fool's errand because it's just kind of like, this is what the Cowboys are, like I hate that I just keep saying that, but it's like, I wish there was reinforcements. Even the Tyler Guyton pick. Sorry. All right. Tyler Guyton to me was more of a second rounder project-y tackle and who only played right side in college and played like 12 games. I think 15 starts. I think he had in college, all on the right side. And then they're going, yep, you are the blind side left tackle as a rookie in Dallas. And that to me is just like, yeah, in 3 years, that might be right. 3 years, that's a project that could work out for you. But you're saying, oh, we're competing this year. We have a top 10 offense and everything with that. Usually doesn't add up to good offensive play. And so just little decisions like that just keep adding up and big decisions.
Man, pretty big ones. Yeah, certainly a team that is not necessarily archaic in their offense. Miami Dolphins here, our next one we're going to talk about. 23rd in EPA per play since week 5. And again, we at least got one game with Tua here in this mix. 17th in success rate as well. So again, just we can be quicker on this one just because, we know what the deal with the Dolphins are. But like first week back with Tua in there, did things feel, I know they lost the game. Pretty critical note here, by the way. They lost the damn game. They were 7th in EPA per play among offenses in week 8. They were 10th in success rate. Are we good here? Is this enough to get us out of mid? I don't know if it's enough to get us out of, or to get us to where we wanted them to be, like top 5 unit, but are we officially out of mid with Tua in the mix here?
If mid is like late teens, like we're at 23rd in EPA per play, like I think they're better than that. But I do think you saw some of the Tua benefits, getting the ball out of time, some of the accuracy, keeping the, helping out the run game a little bit because there's at least some threat of the pass and those RPOs kind of opened up. But then you saw the limitations on some plays and throwing balls short on some deep balls and not being able to push the ball on the outside. And the Cardinals kind of took advantage of some of that. But I do think they're better. Like this is, Cardinals defense is not the greatest unit in the world. But I do think there was a little bit more life there, even if there are still some limitations of the offense. So I think they're going to be another team, just like we'd say with the Bengals, where they're going to creep up and maybe into the top half of the league. But I don't think they're going to end up top 5 because I still think there are defenses caught up a little bit on what they do. And I'm still waiting for that kind of passing game next layer. Like they're running all the same stuff from last year, which is fine. Those are their staples, but defenses caught up to a lot of those staples. The play, the RPO run that the guy in the flat and the switch verts, he still hit a couple, but ever since week 1, week 2, defense has kind of caught up on that stuff. And now they showed it again. Even the Cardinals caught it a couple times. So I still think it's a much better offense for Tua in there. But it's still, I think defenses have caught up with a lot of their staples, which is a little worrisome.
Yeah, that Cardinals defense is interesting because they play so much of that like funky 3 safety stuff that I think that actually
it's the best offense for it to go against is these guys.
Yeah, it can keep so much stuff in front of you, and I think that was in a weird way like a good matchup for that Cardinals defense, even though you think like that doesn't make sense. It kind of makes sense just because
styles make fights.
They run great way to say it, and I think. They get the Bills this week. They get the Rams in week 10, Raiders, Patriots. There's some spots in here where like this offense can cook against a few of those defenses. Maybe not Buffalo. They obviously gave them trouble in week 2. We'll see. And they do a lot of stuff with their safeties on the back end too. But a guy like Jalen Waddle, Nate, like what do we make of the fact that it feels like it's always right about to happen for Jalen Waddle and then it just kind of hasn't, from like a statistical perspective. Still a good player, but have they also... One of the wrinkles I think they put in this year is that they really use Devon Achane a bunch in the pass game. I don't know if that's just like an outlet thing, like, hey, Tua, get the ball. We're already a guy that gets the ball out fast, but like if that first read's not there, like get it to Achane. Like we're never getting to that second read, which is almost always going to be Jalen Waddle. Is he just like kind of as they're trying to do not something necessarily different, but just adding another layer into what the layers they already run? Does Waddle end up kind of being the loser in that scenario? Yeah,
he's ended up becoming like an expensive decoy, and it's
not great.
No, and it's it's good in the overall sense of the offense. So you mentioned the Achane stuff, and all that space that gets created for Achane is because of the threat of Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And there's benefits to having all that. Helps if you have a quarterback that launch it and then kind of make it more threatening. But that's why Achane gets those, is because those swing routes and underneath stuff pops open because they're so scared of Waddle down the field. Unless it's ultra designery, unless it's specific one-offs, that's where I think Waddle gets his touches now. And I think now it's really just been more he's part of the offense as opposed to featured in the offense, if that makes sense. And it still has a role in everything, but I think the production is just going to come and go based on the looks. It's not going to be like, hey, we're getting them the ball eight times guaranteed. I think they just go, well, we have speed at these other spots, so if the ball goes there, cool, we're fine with it. And it's just one of those, the scheme, the concept worked, but maybe we're not happy because Jalen Waddle doesn't get the ball. And also he's smaller and he's just always battling injuries. And I think that's part of it too, is that he's always seems like good play, and then he takes a hit, and then it's like, okay, and then he's out for a series, all right, then he's back in, and then maybe misses a play. And I think some of that too. I think maybe some coaches are just kind of like, well, okay, well, we can't design a play if you're not going to be out there for this. So it's God, I know it's such a weird offense for me to kind of like dissect, because it's like there's so much cool stuff and so much unique stuff that they do, and so many threats that they can provide. But then it's always going to leave you wanting more, because you just see all these guys running at warp speed, and it's really cool, and you want them all to have the ball all the time. But I think there's just repercussions of what has happened in the offense.
All right, final one here, Vikings. I didn't expect to talk about them, but then just looking at the data, real. Since week 5, 24th in EPA per play, 27th in success rate. And, look, they lost Christian Darrisaw for the season. And if you thought like, oh, all right, maybe they'll start thinking about next year, they get their first round quarterback. No, they make a trade for Cam Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, nope, we're not just going to walk out whoever at left tackle, which after watching on Thursday night, after Christian Darrisaw left that game, I kind of get it. That was pretty brutal. So what do we make of obviously losing an important player like Darrisaw, who I think was playing really good football? Yep. And then, again, these numbers that have come down from some of the stuff we were excited about early on in the season. Are the Vikings now maybe kind of trending down at this point? And is there anything you see beyond just any of the players, like schematically, stuff like that? Mm-hmm. What's going on with this team?
I think it's just that they're now becoming relying on, they're so pass heavy, way more pass heavy than you would even think. And I get it. You have Justin Jefferson. You got some other cool options out there. Hawkinson's coming back, which is also going to be nice. So I don't think they're going to stop throwing the ball and chucking it. And so that's a little dicey with Cam Robinson, who can be up and down. I think some Vikings fans are kind of maybe a little too excited about what Cam Robinson is, but he's fine.
They know the name and they know the salary.
Yes, and they saw that he was franchised once, and they're like, oh, this guy played at a big school, all that stuff. Most offensive line evaluations. He's fine.
Vikings are 8th in neutral pass rate. You're right. I didn't realize they were up this high, because we've liked a lot of what we saw from the run game and Aaron Jones, and like they have a good defense. Like you'd think, hey, let's maybe take the air out of the ball a little bit here, and the old school bullshit, bleed some clock, rely on the defense, all this stuff, and win games that way. But no, they've continued to push it.
Yeah, and that's where I don't think Kevin O'Connell is going to change. Like he was chucking it with Nick Mullins back there, and so I think this is their formula, which I think they're going to rely even more on play action to help out. The left tackle being gone, to get the ball into their explosive playmakers' hands. They're always going to have, I actually think they're a little lower than you expect in play action rate. I think we're going to see more of that. So maybe it's going to be more run game and even more shot plays in this offense, where they rely on even more explosives, which they already have a high amount. But I think that's going to just lead to some up and downness. I think it's going to be a boom bust pass game where it's not going to be as successful throwing the ball. And I don't know if this is good or bad for Darnold. Like lean into be as boomy busty as you could be. And that's what the whole offense is going to be. I think the run game will get an uptick though. So I just mentioned the pass game being, that high. I do think the run game will get an uptick, because I don't think O'Connell is that dumb to realize that their left tackle, I think he's very good, that their left tackle is gone. We can't be chucking it that much, even if we do provide help with him. So I think you see more play action plays, more shot plays down the field, and an uptick in the run game, as kind of like really the more of the benefits of that, if there are benefits with your franchise left tackle being knocked out of the year. So they're not a top 6 offense that like they were cooking. I don't think they're this 24th, bottom. I think they're somewhere in the middle, like most things in the NFL. But they're going to be more matchup based than they were early in the year because of this, because now they have to have this run game be sustainable as opposed to maybe even more explosive.
Yeah, Sam Darnold's 9th in terms of deep throw percentage this season. He's a top 6 in terms of passer rating on deep throws. So they might have to be more of that type of guy. I think I've always been a little mixed on Jordan Addison, but I think they can get him a little more activated. And I also think Hawkinson coming back will and we'll see what version of himself he is, but he is kind of the safety blanket in this offense. Like when Josh Dobbs took over, I was betting like the over on Hawkinson catches every single week because he was just like, all right, if it's not there, let's get it. It's just easy button Hawkinson over and over again, kind of in the short and intermediate flat area. And then really the big concepts obviously are down the field to Justin Jefferson, who great call out by you last week in the prop bets about like when he says he wants over 100, he's getting over 100. And like, man, they came out right away, like designed concepts to him. And I love that. I think that's one of my favorite things about Kevin O'Connell. He's so intentional about like, I'm going to make sure my number one guy, we've talked about this, like, put him in positions to be successful and targeted early on in the games. So love that. I think actually of all these offenses, even though they probably have the shakiest quarterback situation of the four, I think just play caller wise and the flexibility of the play caller and the personnel, I think that they actually can probably, if somebody's going to escape mid, I do think they're kind of the one that I think can escape mid the most.
I agree. That's kind of how I end up on it. And looking at outside of garbage time, they're 11th in play action rate. They're at 17.1%. Right around the Broncos and Panthers. I think that just gets a slight uptick to maybe that's you're getting 18%, 19%, where it's maybe 1 or 2 a game. On early downs especially. So I think that's where they're going to change it up. Great call with the Hawkinson stuff. Like, in their formula he is the number 2 pass catcher. Yes, Addison's the number 2 receiver, but in the hierarchy of the pass catcher, he's the number 2. And so that's where you get that element. Addison's more the intermediate guy. Jefferson's just everywhere. And Hawkinson is the underneath an intermediate guy. It's just to kind of be that secondary option. So even if he's 80% Hawkinson, it is going to be nice. It's much better than, Month and Oliver and CJ Ham getting those touches. No offense to them.
The lumbering through it, like tight end 2, 3, and
the
that
true Y tight ends, complimentary and derogatory.
Well, they get the Colts and the Jags the next 2 weeks, so that's a nice little mouthwash.
That's
there
some
for
good
your
mouthwash.
All right, let's take our first break. We come back. We'll do things that Nate is nerding out about and saying the quiet part out loud right after this. All right, we're back. Nate, what are you nerding out about this Halloween season?
I wish I could just talk more about the Rams offense, but I'm going to go with an offensive coordinator that used to be with the Rams. That used to be with the Rams. That's the Falcons being everything Charles McDonald probably hoped they could be. It's this run game rocks, man. Bijan Robinson rocks. Tyler Algier rocks. How the passing game is shaken out and how Kirk Cousins, who still can't really move, but how he can't at all. It's like, oh, okay, this is just what you are. So now we got some data points about old quarterbacks with Achilles injuries, so it's good. But if that ever comes up again, in whatever, 5 years, every other quarterback's like 30 right now or 25. But Cousins is operating really well. He's aggressively. They figured out, we've talked about Drake London and his usage a little bit, watching him block and do all the dirty slot stuff and then just be a monster with the ball in his hands. Just such a fun player. Derek Klassen, I guess, had a prediction that Drake London would lead the league in first downs. And I actually I'm like, yeah, that's looking pretty good right now. Like, he's just a first down chain mover. And it's cool to see him and Mooney slot into their spots. Kyle Pitts is getting going. Even outside of National Tight End Day, they're starting to get him on the move. As opposed to, he is not a static route guy. Get him moving. And he is a monster. And so I just think I'm nerding about that this offense is just making sense. I think Zach Robinson's doing a great job of using all his guys well and using them in the right ways. Even his offensive line, it's a ton of zone concepts, and that's fine because this offensive line was supposed to be Arthur Smith's offensive line with a lot of zone stuff, so they're built to win that way. And they've mitigated some offensive line injuries, especially at center. And this is a really good offense right now. In the numbers I look at, my combined offenses, success and explosive play rate, sex rate, they're 7th outside of garbage time. They're in between the Rams and the Chiefs. So this is an offense that's efficient. Efficient on the ground, explosive on the ground, efficient through the air, and explosive in the air. They don't make too many mistakes. The offensive line's good enough that if they do have to drop back, it's not where they want to live, but they can do it. It's kind of like a Stafford, like we always say, like Stafford plus. It's like a Stafford minus, kind of like with Kirk Cousins doing it. So this just offense is cooking. I think they're just going to keep ascending. They might end up top 5 in the metrics that I look at by the end of the year, because it just makes sense that I don't think they have a ton of weaknesses right now.
I like it. So a couple things here. You mentioned Derek Klassen first downs for Drake London. Right now, he is 6th in the NFL in first downs among receiving first downs. Yes. 28th. He's 28. Excuse me. And if you do ties, I guess he's pretty much top 5 there. My prediction on this show is he was going to lead the NFL in receptions, and he's 5th there. He's tied for 4th with Jamar Chase with 48. Okay. Brock Bowers, Garrett Wilson, Chris Godwin. Obviously, he ain't going to get any more catches. Jamar Chase, Drake London. So and then also Wan'Dale Robinson, disgustingly, also has 48 receptions. 48 receptions for 333 yards. I'm sorry. Throw the freaking tracker up again. 6.9 yards per catch, Nate. That's disgusting.
The Jerome Bettis of receivers. When he'd finish a game with 5 carries for 3 touchdowns and 1.2 yards.
The crazy thing about the one, and I'm sorry I'm doing this right now in a section we're not talking about this. The crazy thing about the Wan'Dale Robinson stuff is he actually has the second lowest catch rate among these guys with 48 plus catches. It's 66.7%. Yeah, that doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't.
All right, I said my piece. Number 1 Wan'Dale Robinson hater on earth, Matt Harmon. Falcons offense, though. So Drake London, we know that production's been great. You mentioned Kirk Cousins in terms of out of the pocket stuff. It's wild. You look at him, he's barely even thrown any passes out of the pocket this year. I'm trying to look it up on the fly here. 11 pass attempts, 7 completions. That's right in the same neighborhood as Mason Rudolph, Tyler Huntley, Joe Flacco, Will Levis, Tua, Aiden O'Connell. These dudes that have not even started a full season, and Kirk Cousins, 11 pass attempts out of the pocket this year. Beautiful stuff. 15
throws on the run. The next gen stats is that 8 or more miles an hour they were moving when they threw the ball. So he has 15, 5% of his pass attempts. I want to say that Josh Allen had 9 of those in just last game. It's it was the guys actually Josh Allen, Lamar's of the world, the guys that can throw and move, or run and throw, they just dwarf those numbers. So it's fun to watch a pocket passer truly be a pocket passer, but sometimes it's okay, this is got to do something. Yeah, you feel a little dangerous. It feels scary because you're oh god, because he can't get out of the way. It's the it's the Austin Powers steamroller scene in the hallway. I'm just saying, 7th movie reference. Okay, we'll bat
seen
5
it
on
though.
It. Yeah, you have seen it. Yeah,
seen it. Obviously, I've seen Austin Powers. I'm a boy that was born in the very, very early 90s.
Yes,
so right. I've seen Austin Powers. Yeah, but I think the real applicable takeaways to this from a fantasy perspective with how we're really liking, because I'm with you on a lot of this stuff. I really have enjoyed watching the Falcons offense, the Drake London usage, the whole deal. We know Drake London is a stud. We know obviously Bijan Robinson's awesome. Tyler Algier is one of the best number 2 backs in the league who probably could start for this team if Bijan Robinson didn't exist, and would be probably a running back 1 in fantasy football. Kirk Cousins, definitely a quarterback streamer, that as well. I think the Kyle Pitts usage that you bring up, I've noticed that he has definitely been used on more of these runway routes and things like that, as opposed to some of the, go and win downfield stuff. The more being a matchup kind of matchup nightmare guy, really, that he was supposed to be, as an interior receiver. We've seen more of that lately. So while he may never be a true set it and forget it fantasy tight end, I do think that he's going to give you big weeks. And look, at this position, to me, that puts him in the top 12 rest of season, rankings at tight end, because even a guy like Tucker Kraft, who is really good, he's going to give you big up and down weeks. So it's there's a lot of, I think I feel better about Pitts than I did certainly a month ago. And lastly, Nate, I want to just bring up Darnell Mooney here. Darnell Mooney's been awesome this year.
I will eat crow on that. I did not think he could handle this role, and he looks great in this role. So yeah, no, he looks great.
Yeah, like when we had Drake London on the show, he talked about like kind of how Darnell Mooney's just been, great for them and great for him, like opening things up to running more of those vertical routes that Drake London was kind of running in the previous offense. It's been like, for me too, I liked some of Mooney's early Bears work, but I never saw him as a true, I mean, he's fast and stuff like that, but I never saw him as like a downfield X receiver. But like their number 3 receiver is Ray McCloud. You think he's out there doing the X receiver stuff if we're talking about Drake London and all this power slot stuff? I don't think so, folks. Like Darnell has been doing that. Mm-hmm. He's been really good at it. And he's the guy that I think is probably still really underrated in fantasy. Like, is there really that much of a difference when you look at a guy like Darnell Mooney versus, I don't know, like a Jalen Waddle from a production standpoint? I mean, he's going to get a lot more targets than Jalen Waddle. What about like a Jameson Williams type? Like those boom weeks, we've seen them. We've seen floor weeks. We've seen a lot of boom weeks from Darnell Mooney. There's no way that he's valued like that across the fantasy industry. So probably a guy that you can start as a wide receiver 3, maybe be like I always say this when you're making fantasy trades, like, you know what, we're close. Throw Darnell Mooney in there and we'll call it a deal. I do think he's still pretty undervalued in that way.
The Trojan horse trade. Like just I'm actually getting this guy, but yeah, throw him in there too. Yeah, that's actually how I got my hands on Tucker Kraft in a dynasty league. Can you just? I have Musgrave, and I just want to cover my bases. Can you throw Tucker Kraft in there? Oh yeah, sure.
Better player.
I don't think he's even starting, right? No, he's not. And worked out great for Nate. No, the Mooney stuff is so true because these types of offenses need juice. Like you need space. And that was the issue this Falcons offense ran into last year with Arthur Smith. It was like, all right, who's the juice guy? Scotty Miller? Mooney is a load better than Scotty Miller. And that's why you create this offense that can attack those intermediate areas with Pitts and London and all that, because you need that guy that takes off the top.
All right, let's do a little saying the quiet part out loud. And ours are kind of in conjunction with each other. So I'm going to let you go first, and then we'll talk about mine after this.
So I'm doing my updated big board for the 2025 NFL draft, and it's kind of mid. Not my work, but the class. It's kind of mid. Quarterback class is kind of leaves you squinting. The receiver class kind of leaves you squinting. Cool running backs, some cool tight ends, but it's kind of mid. And I hate to say that. I always try to find the silver lining, but yeah. So be wary of that if you're in Devy leagues, planning ahead some dynasty stuff. Yeah, just be wary that the skill positions outside of maybe some running backs is a little shaky right now.
When you say it's a mid class, especially we'll come back to quarterbacks in a second, but when you say this with receivers, like number one, if it's a lesser receiver class than last year, I think I'm actually kind of okay with that.
It is. I can easily say that.
Okay, great. Because I got like 25 dudes deep in terms of reception perception charting, and I still felt like I wasn't even close to the amount of guys like I wanted to have on the site. So I feel actually pretty good about that from a workload standpoint. When you say is it like mid like 2023 was kind of definitely in hindsight and really in the moment it looked like a mid class because okay, JSN, good prospect, he's been ultra mid in the NFL. Zay Flowers, okay, pretty good. Like Jordan Addison, okay, whatever. A lot of guys that didn't really project as number ones, or is it maybe going to be a little bit better than that?
I think that's what it ends up like. Ted McMillan from Arizona is my receiver 1. I believe I'm going to have him 12th, I think, overall on my big board when it comes out. And he's a big body guy, good catching range and everything. I compared him to like a Michael Pittman plus. And but and the rest of the class isn't overwhelming. Like really, I want this guy more like as a I don't have a top. I do blue chip grade, which is a true first rounder to me. That's like this guy's easily in the lottery, top 15, yada yada. And then I consider Tet more of a green chip, which is like second, late first, early second round grade. But he's the top half of that kind of grade. But he ends up 12th on my big board. So that's always like a thing with grades and big boards and how it shakes out. But with him is like he's I think the clear receiver 1 to me. But again, he has limitations. He's not the speediest guy. He's more a big body guy. But then you look at other guys, Luther Burden. I know he has fans. He's from Mizzou. To me, he's a slot only gadget guy. And that always brings alarm bells for me. He has size, but they don't trust him to win outside at all. It's like all of his stuff is slot or design touches. And some of his production hasn't been there. There's been some nice games, and he has juice, he has all that, but to me, that's not a guy you take top 15. That's a guy you take 25, 28, 36. He's not going to go that late, but it's going to be somewhere in between. And those are really the consensus top 2 guys and my top 2 guys. But then so it is more like that class, the JSN class, where it's a lot of, seems like super role players, a lot of secondary guys. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, really, really like him. Dirty work guy, can play inside out, just does everything really well. I think of him, though, as a really good number 2, not a number 1 alpha guy. So that's where receiver-wise, it's just a lot of that. A lot of squinting like second rounders and third rounders, as opposed to take this guy top 15. Some guys will get bumped up. People love their receivers, all that stuff. But right now, there's not a lot of true juice at the position. But there are some tight ends. I will say that again. So, but receiver wise, that's where I kind of feel like it is a lot more like that JSN class, where it's going to be there's going to be 7 guys in the same tier. And it's just all oh yeah, I like this guy. I don't love him. I like this guy, but I don't love him. Ted McMillan be the only receiver that truly right now I'm yeah, I could see him being a number 1, but that's still a smaller chance than Ndunze, Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., even Brian Thomas Jr. I have a higher grade on than McMillan at this point, maybe about the same grade, give or take. That's kind of they have about the same grade, and that's receiver 4 last year. It would be my receiver 1 this year. So it's just kind of how it shakes out.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at my top, we'll call it 7 players from that 2023 class. JSN, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman. Those are my top, top 7 guys. And I would say all, other than Quentin Johnson, although Johnston's kind of leveled off to being
nice
a useful player.
Yep.
Who's the best player from that list? Jaden Reed?
Jaden Reed. Yeah.
And Reed's really good.
Yeah.
He's the best Packers receiver, but he's probably not a funnel it all through him number 1 type of guy.
Nope.
Even Zay Flowers, good player, but probably not a funnel it all through him number 1 type of guy. JSN's a fancy Tyler Boyd is what somebody called him on the Panic Meter show, which is I think he's a good player. And I think there are scenarios where that guy can be your number 1 if he becomes Keenan Allen, but I think JSN probably has not become Keenan Allen. So that has not gone well. Addison, fine player. Josh Downs, really good player. Maybe we'll see more and more of him with Anthony Richardson out of the mix here. Tillman we're starting to see now. So yeah, it's that's kind of the vibe that we're going for here when we're looking at this receiver class. But you said the quarterbacks. Let's loop that into my thoughts here, because this tweet from at the Block Spot, Sam Block on Twitter got my attention. Anthony Richardson is 22, benched. Bryce Young is 23, benched. Trey Lance is 24, benched. Justin Fields is 25, benched. This is where I think he kind of starts to lose the plot here, just in my opinion, Sam, but I get your point. Will Levis is 25, benched. Zach Wilson is 25, benched. Mac Jones is 26, benched. Kenny Pickett is 26, benched. The NFL has a quarterback development problem. My saying the quiet part out loud thing, Nate, is I don't think this is that bad of a thing. No. I get it. We would like to have, I'll stop whispering now. We'd like to have these young guys, right? We like to have the CJ Strouds that come in and just are immediate dudes. For the most part, these guys are not going to be that. So I'm starting to kind of, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, because I think some of these guys were just not going to ever work out, right? I don't think Will Levis or Zach Wilson were ever going to be good under any circumstance. But it's and I actually think that the way the Jets played the Zach Wilson thing was stupid in one sense, because they just made him the backup last year. But I actually kind of think they tried to have their cake and eat it too, where Wilson didn't work out, but we bring Rodgers in and then he learns behind Rodgers, and then maybe he comes back and that, then he's that guy. I kind of think that's maybe what the Colts are doing right now. They said today, oh no, Joe Flacco's actually our starter going forward. Yeah. We'll see how long that lasts. If Flacco has a couple bad games, they might just go back to Richardson, who knows, but they're kind of trying to have it both ways now at this point. I feel in a way that we've expected too much of these young guys to come in and immediately be starting quarterbacks. And we're seeing so many guys like Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff and go down the list, even Sam Darnold, even if the Vikings offense has had their issues, but these guys that have flamed out elsewhere because there were all these expectations, and then they come out and they are viable, and even in like Goff's standpoint, probably like a top 10 quarterback right now, the way he's playing. Like, I think this is actually not a bad thing. Like, we're talking about a quarterback development problem. I think maybe we do need to look at the way we're developing these guys, and I don't know if it's always to play. Like, we've talked about Richardson needs the game reps, sure, but was there also another path always available where they take him and have him sit behind a guy like Flacco, who then, by the way, also helps you develop these other players? Like, yeah, A.D. Mitchell is not off to a good start as a Colts receiver, but would he also be off to a better start if, yeah, he's made mistakes and he's left plays on the field, but what about the other routes out there that RGC's never getting the football, or he's getting inaccurate footballs? A guy like Josh Downs becomes like a forgettable asset when Richardson's out there, but when Flacco's out there, he's suddenly like one of the most productive receivers in the league, you know? And so is there a way to do this, Nate, where, and again, I'm trying to not talk out of both sides of my mouth here. I'm trying to more like, this is less of a saying the quiet part out loud, more of like, I'm just asking questions here. Like, what is the answer? Could it be that like the best way to do this is, hey, we have a Flacco here. He helps us develop all these young guys. And then when they're all good, then we drop Richardson in here and we're ready to go. I'm just using that as a one example because it's the one kind of in the news right now.
Yeah, I think too, and because everyone also makes jokes when everyone's like, oh, when has this worked out? And people go like, oh, Josh Allen, everything, because everyone says, oh, you're using the outlier. I think that all these guys are so different in their developmental path, and also all of them are going in such different situations that's why it's so hard to just kind of like broad stroke it, even though we all want to do it because it's a lot easier to think that way. But it's I think really the lesson for a lot of people should be like, yeah, quarterback's the most important position. It's not the only position. It's not the only position that matters. Like, ecosystem matters for all these guys. I've seen Patrick Mahomes barely even get the ball off because the offensive line sucked. Like, you know, the best quarterback in the league, the best quarterback I've seen in my life probably couldn't even operate because the line stunk for a month. That is just kind of what this is. Not all these guys are going to step into Justin Herbert's rookie year. And everyone's like, wow, you know, we get this guy, and you see him just step in, 4-year starter in college, gets into he wasn't even supposed to start right away. Tyrod Taylor got stabbed in the heart right before. What's that doctor doing now? But then, but Justin Herbert comes out there and he's throwing to Keenan Allen. He's throwing to Mike Williams. He's throwing to a team that had winning aspirations the year before, but got injured a bunch. So that's why they had a top 10 pick out of nowhere. That's a beneficiary of the situation. Every time we keep going like, well, this team was good. Why this quarterback was good in the year one? We all just seem to forget the situations that they get dropped into. Josh Allen was given a lot of time. He didn't start right away either. They threw him in against the Vikings on the road, and they were like 20-point underdogs, and he just ran out there and did. And like that was because they had no expectations for that team. They were truly just slowly building everybody up. They signed a boatload of like stopgap vets that were supposed to be good leaders, and they created a nice incubation system for him. Like, hey, you know, we have some leadership here. The Colts just to me seem like, I don't know. They say one thing and their actions are totally different. And I understand the actions if they kind of like also, you know, said that as well. They're saying, oh yeah, this before the season, this guy needs reps, this guy needs time. Then now they're going like, well, actually, we don't know. That to me is just kind of like, all right, are you guys making this shit up, or you kind of have something in your back pocket? But I think when I just look at all these guys, so like if you just went one after one, Bryce Young had limitations. I still feel like I'm crazy that he was a historical size outlier and everyone just acts like, oh, he's in a bad situation. Him is different than Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young was supposed to be, he was supposed to be, the thing about Bryce Young, that the story, the narrative that got told by everyone, he's the smartest quarterback that Bill O'Brien has ever had other than Tom Brady. So to me, that is, oh, this guy's plug and play. And if you go in there and it looks like it's overwhelming to you, all right, what else you got? Bo Nix, that was his argument, but guess what? Bo Nix can run. And at least there's some juice there that, okay, we can tap into this. Trey Lance got way
By the way, just real quick on Bryce Young, like it never is lost on me that there's an interview with David Tepper, and like, you mean, you have to be a sick freak like me to even know this exists. But there's an interview with David. Yeah, it is. There's an interview with David Tepper where he talks about, well, Bryce is such a good point guard that we actually don't need like good receivers around him, basically. We don't need to have stars around him, and openly saying that the quarterback is all that matters. So it's like completely against everything that you're talking about right now.
And God, if that's your argument, I mean, just I don't know. The whole Panthers thing is just like none of it made sense. Freaking S2 scores, man. And then but this is why I like going case by case. Like Trey Lance to me was overdrafted. I thought he was a back half first round guy in that class. I liked him. I liked the tools. But you're taking a guy that's barely started a year, has barely played quarterback, and you're taking him top 5. And they kind of ran into a situation where they're like, oh, we have Brock Purdy who can run this offense. And they stumbled into something there. And it worked out great for them. Fields to me is going to be one of the one I think Fields has done more damage for my evaluation process. That not damage. I've learned so much from the Fields experience that I maybe have extrapolated on other guys. Fields is his own thing. Levis is his own thing. And I think that's why it's not something, it's always going to be hard to find 32 starting quarterbacks. Quarterback is hard in the NFL. Like imagine if we expand and there's 36 guys that we need. Usually in the history of time of the NFL, there's going to be a lot of bad quarterback play and there's going to be young quarterbacks that wash out easily. You're all looking at the flashes and the sustainability of what they can do when they are out there. That's why I still am a believer in Richardson, because I saw some glimpses of sustainable play. It was not too big for him. It wasn't like he was his head scanning every which way like Zach Wilson. Every time I watched Zach Wilson, I was like, it's not clicking. Like he didn't have the mental side that I thought he had tools. So that's why, again, it's just case by case. It's just all differently. Shoot, Mac Jones is a rookie. Everyone was going like, wow, did the Jags make a mistake here? Not taking Mac Jones number 1 overall? Well, and it's like
current Jaguar Mac Jones.
And now he's Trevor Lawrence's backup. it's just so it's complicated. I think I've realized a lot of people want to group all this in. Like a guy like Baker Mayfield, great. I would say a good rookie year, solid rookie year. Like there's some really cool flashes. I remember the Raider game at Oakland. He had some really big time throws. But then you can see how much of his situation in the play calling, not having a receiver, feuding with Odell Beckham, they kind of were using him in a different way than I think is different than his skill set. Now we're seeing it in Tampa, and you're like, oh, this is how Baker should be used. These guys are just, unless you have just the true dudes, and even the true dudes are susceptible to their situation. Lamar got to sit most of the year behind Flacco. Then they rebuilt the entire offense to incubate his skill set. Lamar has always been a great passer, but early on in that Greg Roman offense, they were just making it extremely simple. So, and they also could run the ball at a whim. They were getting like 8 yards a pop. So like they were kind of using him in a certain way that limited some of the weaknesses, and he's grown into a better player. So it's just like all these guys that have succeeded or failed. It's just, you have to look at so much outside of just their age or where they were drafted and all that. Even their draft spots can be false in a sense. Like Pickett's always going to have 1-21 next to his name or whatever, 22 next to his name. But that draft class, and really my grade for him, and all those quarterbacks were second and third round grades. But now he's considered a failed first rounder. It's just kind of I'm with you. I'm asking questions and trying to parse this through, but it's a chicken and egg with a lot of it. It's a lot of just all these kind of situations that get dropped into. The Richardson one is going to fascinate me for years, because I just want to know if that the helmet tap was really that it. And I'm starting to think like there's more to it. I still think the operation errors, we talked about it yesterday, it's the operation errors that are more important than I think people realize than a couple missed throws. It's the fumbles in the red zone. It's just the easy botches that you shouldn't be doing as an NFL quarterback. NFL quarterbacks can miss a throw, but you can't just botch a handoff or botch a snap. That's why Justin Fields got benched. That's why Richardson got benched, is because that is the stuff that's controllable for a quarterback. And if you can't control that and you're showing that you can't control that, then coaches are going to lose faith in you even before other players do. And that to me is why I keep harping on that. I tweeted it, all that stuff. Those are the mistakes, not the missed throws. But every guy is different. So,
yeah, I mean, there's so much we could unpack here. I will say just on the Richardson thing, I don't get a chance definitely during the season to like listen to other people's shows nearly as much as I want to. Just too much stuff going on. But last night, smoking a whole chicken after we had to retape the pod here. Yeah, I mean, smoking whole chickens, that's nothing, baby. That's once a week. That's a week that's happening around here. But anyways, I was like, I got to sit out here for a minute. Let me fire up a podcast. And I just like looked at my queue, and Mina's show was the first one up there. And it was just because she put it out right after Richardson was benched, and Dominique Foxworth was on there. And he definitely like, I listened to that, and my opinion about the Anthony Richardson thing almost like completely flipped, because he definitely was saying without saying that there's a lot going on there that we don't know.
Coaches don't change their tone like that.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And he was talking about things like preparation and like time on task and all this stuff. So it's just a good, there's two things I think we should take away from three things to take away from this conversation. And one is, I'm going to dump on myself in the third one. Number one, and I love that you say this because this is something that I fight all the time. All situations are not created equal. Like the best way to do it is case by case. Like to say the NFL, and I'm not saying this, Sam, the tweet that we threw up there that this
no,
like that.
I get the point.
I'm not right, but to say like the NFL has a quarterback development problem, I think is approaching things with blanket statements is usually like never the best way to do it. You got to go case by case as to why things didn't happen. Because like, oh, CJ Stroud's on this list, not on this list. I wonder why. But second thing there is that there is always things that we don't know. Like, yeah, David Tepper said that out loud about this is the way we view Bryce Young. Well, what if he'd never said it? I wouldn't know that, like, oh, they just dramatically overestimated who Bryce Young was. And then 6 games into his rookie season, they're like, we need a wide receiver 1 at the trade deadline. There's always something going on that you don't know. I think this Richardson thing, like I said, after listening to that discussion with Dominique, I'm like, oh, there's a lot more that I don't know. So I'm going to shut up and like not sound like an idiot about this, basically, because who knows? And then
I'm sorry to get to your last point. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, it's and I'm still high on Richardson, but that's why I've been even kind of like tempering this and not going like, man, they're making a mistake and all this stuff. It's
right.
Like, no, I get why there's frustrations outside the helmet tap thing. You can't just operate like that. And that to me is like, what are you practicing? Why are you so excited? Because you practice to be calm on game day. You practice so you don't get excited about the stuff. And I know that sounds backwards, but you practice so you've done it 20 times in your head, mentally or physically. And then it's like when it happens, you go, oh, I've done this before. Boom, done. Boom, I can hand that off. Boom, that's the look I wanted. I can throw this touchdown. Not bounce 3 times because you were like, oh, I recognize this guy's open, and I throw it deep. So again, it's and again, this with Anthony Richardson, he was a receiver until his sophomore or junior year in high school. So again, this guy hasn't been trained in these moments since 6th grade, 7th grade, like even I was. And those things, like this is all so fast and new for him. So again, it's just, there's more than just outside a couple missed throws. And honestly, there's been a quote unquote QB development issue in the NFL since I was born. As someone that's read forever. NFL headlines my entire life, it's so funny to me which ones get rehashed over and over and over and over. And it's like, this is refs suck. There's always injuries. Why is all the stars hurt? Is it because of a different style of change? And why is there not enough quarterbacks? Because it's really hard to play NFL quarterback. And there's always going to be an issue with it.
Which brings me to my third and final point here in this, which was a great transition to that. And this is where I get things wrong. And this is where I think, like, I promise I did not make people just in a week 9 podcast, like go through we did not just go through a long diatribe to not have a point here about the quarterback play and how this can apply to you all out there. Where I know I get things wrong, and I've definitely gotten things wrong over the last 3 to 4 years, is one, projecting growth before you see it. I've been big on this with receivers. Like, this guy in your reception perception metrics, he looks like a number 1. Why aren't you ready to call him like one of the elite number 1s? Like, well, I haven't seen him do it yet. Okay, like I got to see him do it. Like, you want to play like the guy? Okay, great. Now go produce like the guy. You know what I'm saying? Second thing, and that's the true with quarterbacks as well. Projecting growth for a guy like Anthony Richardson, like, well, yeah, look what he did as a rookie. Now imagine if he got better. Well, you don't know he's going to get better. You don't know if he's working to. And again, I don't know, but what if he's not working to get better? And what if helmet tap is not the disease, but it's a symptom of something else?
Yeah,
you don't know. Again, and then my second point there is also I know I've gotten things wrong and I've missed on opportunities to be like ahead of consensus on the Seahawks receivers with Geno Smith that year, the Bucks receivers with Baker Mayfield that year. Jared Goff with that one I was okay about that one because I was like, you guys are too mean to Jared Goff. Like when Amon-Ra St. Brown was getting boosted up after his second season, I'm like, Jared Goff's fine enough to give Amon-Ra St. Brown a productive season. I was still shortchanging Goff, but that's not the point. Like, we miss opportunities when we assume, even this year, and I'm pointing with the finger at myself here. Yeah, okay, but it's Sam Darnold. Like, yeah, okay, but it's Baker Mayfield. Like, but these guys can develop and get better. And I think when Baker got to situations, just to use him as an example because he's talked about this, he's like, I needed to be in situations that were going to help me be successful. And there's not that many situations in the NFL like that. Kevin Clark shared that post from his podcast back in February with Baker at the Super Bowl. These guys get in these situations, like, don't be afraid to, again, not project growth without seeing it, but have your mind open to that being the case.
Right. And even like a Darnold and Baker, like they at least had stretches where it was like, oh, okay, there's sustainability here. And then they can grow from the sustainability if they plopped into amazing situations. It helps to have a great ecosystem. And that's the term we just always come back to is ecosystem. But it matters. It's a lot easier to drive the boat in calm waters than a hurricane out there every single play. And you even see a guy like CJ Stroud who I still think is brilliant, and nothing's going to line up to his play because offensive linemen are taking turns messing up. Receivers are dropping like flies. Like, it's just every guy is susceptible to their surroundings. Even if we want to say the quarterback is all that matters, yeah, it's the crown jewel, but you have to protect that crown jewel and also do things to help it and make it shiny and make it look good. I'm just drawing out the analogy, but it actually worked out there.
Well, you mentioned CJ Stroud. Great transition because we're going to take our final break here, and then we're going to preview Thursday Night Football on the other side right after this. All right, we're back. We got Thursday Night Football. We got Halloween Thursday Night Football. Texans at Jets. Jets are 1.5 point favorites, and they got a 42-point total on this game.
Yeah.
Who's scoring points in this game? I don't know. All right. So this is interesting. Let's talk Texans first.
Okay.
We'll throw some prop bets out here. I don't know if we need to say too much about from a fantasy perspective because, like, Joe Mixon, running back 1. Man, there's a lot of really good running backs in fantasy this year. Like, I'm sure that won't be overstated in the offseason as a talking point, but subject for another day. I will not do another big picture conversation in the middle of a Week 9 podcast like this, but we'll get back to that, I'm sure, at some point in the offseason. But Joe Mixon, running back 1, Tank Dell, probably got to start him, even though I haven't been a fan of how it's always looked this year because there's just nobody else here. So, but let's talk Texans side of things here. Coming off a game where CJ Stroud got harassed by a Colts defense that I'm not that high on. This Jets defense has not played up to the bill this year, but is this a get-right spot potentially for New York's defense, or can the Texans find some matchups here to get going on this Jets defense?
Oh, man, TBD. It's not like the Texans have shown me stuff where I'm like, yeah, man, they're going to do some cool stuff here against this. Like, I actually like what the Patriots offense has done better than what the Texans offense has done recently.
Yikes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, like, looking at this, it's like, all right, where's the ball? Who's going to get fed? All right. Stroud will still trust his Xavier Hutchinsons of the world. Like, so it's like you're looking at if you're trying to find actual value prop wise, it's like that's what I'm kind of looking at as secondary options as opposed to Tank Dell, because I think, Tank Dell and whoever's lined up on the right is going to get the Sauce Gardner, he took a half step down this year. I think the Jets land is not just fruitful for a lot of people right now. Really what has been historically decent against the Jets is because it's a Legion of Boom disciple way down the tree is running backs and tight ends receiving because of just how they play, stuff that can happen over the middle. So like Dalton Schultz is the guy I'm looking. The problem is his over-under's at 43.5. So that's kind of, I was hoping to maybe in the mid 30s or somewhere around there.
What about catches though? over 4.5 catches plus 130.
I like that more than I would like yards. So that would be my first one I would start with is Dalton Schultz.
All right.
Over receptions, because I could see Stroud getting back there, Stroud getting harassed. Okay, we got to get the ball off and get it out. Go to Old Faithful, who's Dalton Schultz in this offense, which is take that as you will. So that for the Texans, that's what I'm looking at. And I'm going with a favorite. Going with a guy that never scrambles, unless he has to. But I'm going against this defense that I think is going to make him have to scramble. And I think that's what he's going to be ticked off and being more aggressive with his legs. CJ Stroud over 8.5 rushing yards. Let's do it.
Nice.
One good rush for a first down. That's all we need to hit this one. I think he's going to have to scramble once or twice, more than he wants to, but because of just necessity. So that is one that I also think you can get after with this Jets defense. That'll put a lot of eyeballs in their match coverages on the receivers as opposed to the running back running, because they think their pass rush can get home. So even though that's a total against type for Stroud, I think this is a type of situation where he might use his legs.
I really wanted to bet the over Joe Mixon carries in this game because I figured I talked about this yesterday with Sal Vetri on the Wednesday Data Dump show, where you'd think like, okay, we got receiver injuries, it's a short week, we're on the road, let's just try to run against this Jets defense who's been vulnerable against the run. Let's just put the ball in Joe Mixon's hands. He's been great for us this year, and let's just try to get out of this game. The problem is the over-under set at 20.5 for carries. Like that's too beefy. Even the rush yards, it's minus 120, 80.5. I don't really even love that necessarily. So I like your two kind of sicko props here: tight end over receptions and CJ Stroud over rushing yards there. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see the roles for these secondary wideouts. Xavier Hutchinson, 19.5 receiving yard prop. I'm maybe interested in that, but
1.5 receptions. Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, the 1.5 receptions is minus 165. So yeah, we can't give that out here. Yeah. We have to have some dignity. But I agree with you. He's probably yeah, exactly. Yeah, parlay that thing, but don't just solo bet that thing. Yeah, because that's that's aggressive. But I do think he's a guy who is probably, they've used him more as that like big slot-ish player that I've talked about. And I will say just one thing, I think maybe we see some more two tight end stuff from this team right now, because Nate, if I'm going to do Bobby Slowick apologist tour stuff here, I would say that they have kind of had to go back and forth between identities a lot, because I think they wanted to be more of a spread 11 personnel team. Now they've had injuries, they're back to 12, they're trying to use more time. It's been a lot here for old Bobby, for PFF Bobby, who hasn't necessarily been up to the task, I think, so far. Let's talk Jets side of things here. God almighty, I really am not optimistic about the offensive product with this team generally right now, and I'm really not optimistic against a Texans defense that we talked about this yesterday. I've been really impressed with what I've seen out of Houston, just defensively. I'm so high on just the way they are. They're a complimentary football team right now. I think they've not been the offense that we expected, but you know what? The defense has picked up the slack. The defense has been, I think, just a really good unit, especially from a pass rush and perimeter coverage perspective. That's what's been really interesting to me, because the corners outside will man you up. The pass rushers on the edge, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. will get after it. And if you look at the way the Jets have used their wide receivers since the last two games with Devontae Adams in the mix, Adams has actually taken more snaps in the slot than Garrett Wilson has. Wilson has been 28.8% slot snaps. Adams has been 46.2%, and he's mostly been a short area target player. So I kind of wonder if this maybe is a Devontae Adams slot targets underneath type of game. Unfortunately, his catches are minus 160 for the over on 4.5. Don't love that. So I really don't know where to go with this Jets team right now.
I'm going sicko running back over receivings.
Right.
This is a Breece Hall catch one. It's the under 4.5 is minus 160. I was going to go over on 4.5 catches. One, if they have to, I can just see Rodgers letting the space get space when they are in zone on first and second down. The Jets will run a lot of screens. With the Texans being so blitz happy on passing downs, they do a lot of man coverage blitzes. That's a way to ease some space there. And so I could see them using Breece Hall's receiving ability to kind of create some space early downs and late downs, really. I don't know if 4.5. Yeah,
Breece Hall 4.5 catches. The over is plus 125.
So if you're feeling sick on it. I know if that was 3.5, I'd feel even better, obviously. But those are what I'm looking at. The Texans are okay defending running backs, but you you can get a lot of successful plays, but not explosive plays. They're a good tackling team. So it's going to be more catches than yards, I think, for this side of the ball. But really, that's what I'm looking at. Like the other one is like Braylon Allen over 20.5 rushing yards. So the backup running back for the Jets, who has a lot of talent, they like getting him touches. Could see him getting those 6 to 8 touches, 6 to 8 carries. If they're going to be a little bit more run heavy, that's a way you can get after this Texans team. So it's like if they're going to be in man coverage or if they're going to be in soft zone on early downs, if they don't have the best interior defensive line against the run, they're talented and fast, but that's maybe a way, again, that you can get after them a little bit. And you're trying to attack their linebackers a little bit. When Alshire is not in there, they have some limitations. So again, I'm just looking at the interior for both teams because honestly, they play the same defense. So it's kind of, I know I sound like I'm repeating myself here, but that's kind of how you attack these teams, especially when I don't know. I just don't want to bet on any Jets receivers. It's like, I don't know. They're trying to figure it out on the fly, and this is a short week. It might just be a Devontae Adams peppering type of game where it's just like, hey, let's get them going because they are going to be in a lot of man coverage. But who knows? Like, you just truly don't know with this team. They're just all over the place.
Yeah, it's tough. Braylon Allen, 20.5 rushing yards is the line. Minus 120 is the over on that one.
That's maybe one. Go Badgers.
Yeah, rush attempts is like 5.5. It's just minus 140.
Which also, like, he could get 6 carries. What's he been at? He's been.
I mean, they for a minute like phased him out, and then last week just ramped
12,
him back
right?
up again. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a 50. Yeah. They put the number exactly kind of like where it should be. Yeah. I'm picturing that kind of 5-6 carries for him because maybe it's going to be a more run heavy script when they're like, well, we can't hold up against this pass rush. So it's going to be just a lot more quick passes. Rodgers getting the ball in his hands, screens and all that stuff. So that's just kind of how I picture their game plan.
Yeah. I wish I could bet on Rodgers sacks.
After we crushed so many last week, this just kind of feels like,
I know.
This is, and really Troy Franklin the week before that. Like, we've been on a nice little run here. I have no idea what our record is. Depends on which ones I want to claim.
Exactly. We never read it. Now they're putting them on graphics on YouTube. So like I guess we
actually have some like accountability on this. I don't know. We've been on a good run though. I will say, I feel like we've been on a good run, but this one is just a weird slate with injuries, short week, teams figuring out their identities. Like the best unit is the Texans defense, which has injuries. So it's, but of the 4 units, that's the best unit. But then it's not like an offense I can set my clock to and go, well, they're going to do this because they're both offenses are trying to figure out what they are. Kind of tough.
I'm going Aaron Rodgers over 0.5 interceptions.
Sicko, I love it.
Minus 110. I'm just pulling for an interception all Halloween because, man, like, I just think about the pressure that these guys are going to be able to put on the edge. Like, Tyron Smith against these edge rushers in the year 2024. Don't love that. And then just Rodgers feeling heat, pressure, some contested throws because of the man coverage here. I definitely think this is going to be, maybe something gets popped up. Garrett Wilson pops another one up. I'm going interception over on this one. But I like all of our props this week. In a weird way, I like all of them, but we'll see what happens. Nate, this has been an electric episode, a jam-packed episode. I appreciate the hell out of you, buddy. Thanks for doing this, and tell the people what you're working on, including that big board, too.
Yep, big board's a big thing going on right now. I'm filing it tonight, so you'll see that tomorrow or when you're listening to this, I should say, on Thursday. And yeah, check that out. And then we got Football 301 coming later this week with Charles, previewing Week 9. And the cosmic ballet goes on. That's where we're at. But check out that big board, top 50. It's an interesting class. It's just I've been really trying to find some guys I love, and it's been a little hard. My top 2 players are corners, so that kind of leaves you letting you know kind of where this class is at.
Well, I'm just excited for a lighter workload.
Yeah.
This draft season. I'm looking forward to that part. But that is going to do it for us today. Somehow, as Nate says, it does keep rolling on, and we are in Week 9. And that means that tomorrow, on Friday, Andy Behrens and Tara Roberts join me to preview all of Sundays and Mondays Week 9 action. How are we here? It feels like the season just started, and yet it feels like it's been going on forever. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the hell out of the football. I'm joining all of you guys joining us for the ride. Until then, we're out.